Hello and welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on YouTube, Facebook, X and Twitch. So good evening if you're watching along live. Our podcast is supported by our loyal Patreon community, and without you, we couldn't make the show each week. So thank you as always. And a huge thank you once again to Pitter Self-Drive for sponsoring this episode. They're still offering TSP listeners 10% off rentals with the code Total Saints. That's all one word. And you can use that code when you're booking online or quote the code when you're booking over the phone. Now, as you know, they offer cars, vans, truck and minibus hire at very reasonable prices. They're flexible on short-term or long-term rental needs, and they operate a 24-hour drop-off service. So there's no need to stress about dropping off the vehicle in working hours. And if you need a van for a tip run or maybe to move some furniture, they now offer hourly van rental as well. Pitter Self-Drive is based in West End, making them the best solution for Southampton van hire at affordable prices. To find out more or to get in touch, head to pitterselfdrive.co.uk or give the team a call on 02380 474 443. Coming up this week on the podcast, Southampton make club history. That 3-1 win at Swansea means it's now 20 league games unbeaten. Going to look back at that trip to South Wales. And it's a break from the league this weekend. We head to Watford in the FA Cup fourth round. Mike Parkin of From the Rookery End podcast will be on later to preview that game. My name's Martin Starke, and joining me this week are Steve Grant, the owner of SaintsWeb, Alfie House, who is senior Southampton reporter for the Daily Echo, and Glen Cour, who is the writer of the blog League One -10. Underpinned by our TSP patrons, this is episode 260 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, we start with the weekly shout out for our Patreon community because their monthly contributions support the show. There are 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And aside from supporting the podcast, each of those tiers has different perks. There's access to an ad-free version of the podcast, exclusive TSP t-shirt and merch bundles. There's the TSP FPL, and you get access to our TSP live events and loads more as well. Now, if you'd like to get involved in supporting TSP each month, just head over to patreon.com/Total Saints podcast for more details. All the links, as always, can be found in the podcast show notes, and you'll find them in the YouTube description as well. Now, Saints beat Swansea 3-1 to extend that unbeaten run to 21 games in all competitions. It's a new club record. Glenn, that first half was some of the best football that we've seen Southampton play. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, said going into this sort of like run of games that we're coming up to that, you know, there's a lot of away games and we've struggled in away games to score the second goal and put teams away. And we obviously scored the second goal after 20 minutes yesterday. But, you know, regardless of the goals, the football we were playing, the way we were carving them open was exceptional. The hunting down of the ball when we lost it. We were helped by the fact that Swansea were woeful in the first half. And I think their manager basically admitted that they got it completely wrong in the first half. But this is the first half was the ruthless streak that we were talking about last week. If teams make mistakes, then we swarm all over it. And 2-0 up after 20 minutes. It really should have been 3 or 4. You know, the keeper made a couple of good saves, which was quite nice for him actually, because he was the one that played the air shot at St Mary's just before the roof fell in on him. And you know, he made some good saves. And frustratingly, they score the first time they get in a half, which is, I mean, obviously our second goal had more than a hint of offside about it, but their goal had a handball and an offside. So so there you go. It is what it is, and I was really impressed by the way we basically went straight up. You know, it was like they've annoyed us now. We went straight up there and scored again. And went in at halftime 3-1, and the world was good. 20 minutes of the second half wasn't bad. It was almost like we were managing the game. We weren't really sort of like working the goalkeeper anymore. We had I think Fraser had one over the bar, and there was the penalty shout on Adams. I can't remember exactly when that was. When he went over, but you know, as unfortunately, we've all got memories like goldfish, and we remember the last 20 minutes. And the last 20 minutes, as Russell Martin said, was diabolical. It really was bad, and I'm sure we're going to get onto why it was bad. So I won't do that now. But the last 20 minutes was a bit streaky. A couple of great saves from Bazunu to. Otherwise, we could have had the ridiculous scenario where we were so brilliant in that first half and ended up hanging on. But it was a strange feeling at the end, because even though we were so good in that first sort of 60 minutes or whatever, I found myself thinking, thank God that's over, because the last 20 minutes was that bad. But I liked Russell Martin's sort of comments after the game, where he basically said, there's more to work on. And I think a couple of broadcasters have sort of picked up on that, the fact that, even though the first part of the game was more or less perfect, the second half of the game certainly wasn't. And there's, that old complacency thing, I think that crept in a little bit in both in the substitutions that were made and in the performance in the last 20 minutes or so. But all's well that ends well. We've got 21 games unbeaten now. And so, things to work on, and moving on.
Happy days. Alfie, we spoke about that need to score more than one goal away from home, and they duly delivered. Really, at half time, we couldn't have asked for more.
Yeah, I mean, like Glen says, it should have been 4-5 at least, really. They broke all sorts of high-speed records, as Nathan Jones would have said, for a first half of Championship football. I mean, they had more shots than any other team this season, more possession, more final third entries, all the things that don't really matter, but kind of do at the same time. They broke the season record for all of them. And it was good movement. It was only 2 tap-ins, wasn't it? But ultimately, it was good movement for them. Che Adams did really well to set one up. He's sort of becoming the striker that this team needs. His link-up play is brilliant. And the way he slips Stuart Armstrong in, and Stuart's a little bit selfish, actually tries to shoot, but ends up falling back to him. Happy days. And Will Smallbone as well. I think his 4th goal of the season. And I think a lot of those goals have been the same for him, haven't it? It's always been somebody pulling in from the left and him just tapping him in, but someone's got to do it. I mean, do we want to get into the second half now? Because, I mean, it is
no.
Interesting. That's fine. I mean, Glen's already spoken about their goal. I mean, their goal is a poor one to concede, isn't it? But it should have been ruled out as such as the second one. So, I mean, in terms of the first half, absolutely brilliant. We all went into the game, I think, with a little bit of nervousness just because of what was on the line, because of it was going back to Swansea, going back to his former side. And everyone, I asked a few people and they all said to me, this is the one you can sort of see the football script writers, penning in a loss for the first time. But they dealt with it really professionally. It was absolutely perfect first half. And, I said it last week, one of the best sort of first half performances I've seen, or that was regarding the second half, actually. And this time, I think it was again.
Yeah, there were some pretty cagey predictions, I think, going into this one. Steve, Alfie said there could have been 5-0 at half time. We wouldn't have been surprised the way we were playing. That was a decent 45 minutes.
Yeah, would have been entirely justified. I mean, for the score to have only been 3-1 at half time was not remotely a reflection on the way that first half had panned out. 4 or 5-0 would have been entirely fair. But yeah, I mean, as Glen says, credit to their keeper who pulled off 2 or 3 really good saves to keep the score down. I don't think it was even wayward finishing on our part either this time, which has certainly been a criticism in the past. Keeper just got in the right place and made the saves. I mean, the way we played that first half, there were so many of those little balls around the corner that Adams was playing in particular, where for some reason the Swansea fullbacks were about 10 yards far too high up, and it just gave whoever was running in behind, whether it was either of the Armstrongs or Ryan Fraser on the left, they always had the run on them, and we were just able to run through them at will. And yeah, I mean, as I say, it's should have been 4 or 5 at half time, and then probably the way that second half panned out probably doesn't pan out that way, because I think if it is 4 or 5 at half time, Luke Williams is probably sat there saying, right lads, look, we've just got this damage limitation for the remainder. Whereas when they go in at 3-1 down, they're thinking, well, we've got away with that. We're still within touch. So actually, let's try and change this up a little bit and do things a little bit smarter, which they did. In fairness, I mean, Williams, I think, seems like he's got a decent tactical head on his shoulders. His Notts County side were, I mean, while in the National League, they're them and Wrexham that had sort of bigger budgets than everybody else. You've still got to use that budget, and the football they played was excellent. Even once they got promoted, they were basically the possession team in League Two. So I think, Swansea fans, as we mentioned last week with the lad who was on from Swanscast, that is the Swansea way. That's the way that they want to play. It's the way they've played for 15, 20 years now. So I think he'll do all right there. I think he'll be quite popular. So yeah, I think, as I say, if we'd been as clear in the first half as we should have done, that second half probably doesn't pan out the way it did.
Glen, Alfie mentioned one of the goals there for Che Adams and that ball over the top, which I think was better than obviously for the finish for the goal, which was well worked. But the second goal, Will Smallbone, I felt had a pretty good game yesterday, and that second goal was the least we deserved, really. Right, maybe offside, but
yeah, maybe.
Maybe a touch. I think it was it Harwood Bellis who chipped over the top again, but that was a great goal, and it was important to get that second.
Yeah, it was. It was nice to have the first goal go in and there be no backward step. It was basically, we're going to score the second goal, and that hasn't always been the case in our away performances this year. So it was nice, and I think the club have clipped up that second goal because it starts with Will Smallbone battling for the ball over on the right hand side, and then we switch it to the left, back to Harwood Bellis, over the top, Armstrong eventually, and then Smallbone. So it's good that he was involved at the start and the end of the move. I'm not 100% sold on Will Smallbone. I haven't been this season. I've been quite consistent with that. He drives me mental sometimes, but that was the best game I've ever seen him have. The game he had yesterday, I thought he was excellent. Whether it was Joe Rothwell being on the bench and him thinking he's a threat to my place, maybe he listened to Alfie last week. But no, I thought Smallbone had an excellent game, and he seemed to be, I don't want to say a yard quicker, but he seemed to be sort of getting to the tackles quicker. And I think there was a number of times I'm not into the stats, as you know, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if he had, if he won the ball back more times yesterday than he normally does as well. And I just thought he had a really good game, and I was amazed on the Sky Sports coverage that they actually picked him for man of the match, because usually they go for Adam Armstrong, whatever he does, and it was good, and it was well deserved, and he spoke well after the game, about the achievement of getting the run of games, and he just wants to play. So I thought he was he's taken his chance well, because obviously, as I said, Rothwell's on the bench. He knows Aribo's coming back. He knows Charlie Alcaraz is in the mix as well, so he has to perform at a consistently high level to stay in the team. And fair play to him. Last couple of games he's been better, to be honest. But I thought he was exceptional yesterday.
Flynn Downs with the third goal, Alfie's first for the club. He didn't celebrate, but I certainly did watching at home, because I felt that was a really key time. I thought if we start the second half and it's 2-1, we've had a bit of history with ropey starts to the second half. So to get that third before half time was perfect timing, and he'll have enjoyed that. Yeah,
and his teammates certainly celebrated as well. They all rushed over and sort of grabbed him a little bit. I was watching the podcast that Alan Shearer and those guys do, and I think Alan Shearer said that it doesn't matter who he's playing against or what team he's for, he would always celebrate every single goal, because that's what he's paid to do. So I do like it when players don't celebrate and they show that respect. But at the same time, I don't think anyone would have complained if he did. But I suppose he probably loved his time so much at Swansea under Russell Martin that just feels that connection. But yeah, it was a really important goal. It was his 25th birthday as well, wasn't it, yesterday? So special day for him all round. First goal of the season. I don't think it'll be many more. I think that's his fourth in his career from 205 appearances or something like that. So I don't imagine there'll be too many more to come this season. But what a player he is. For me, he was tied with Stuart Armstrong for my man of the match. I probably would have given it to Stewie, but Will Smallbone as well up there, for sure.
Steve, do you want to cover off the goal that we conceded? Sky was saying that Bazuni should have gone for clattering into defender. ITV were focusing on the handball and the offside when I saw the highlights this morning. My take, it was just some pretty poor defending all round.
I think both those broadcasters are right. in that, yes, it was offside and yes, it was a handball, because I mean Jamal Lowe has basically completely bottled out of the challenge with Bazunu.
Yeah.
He's gone in thinking that he's basically going to get clattered. And he's kind of left his elbow up there, and he's not gone to actually head the ball, and the ball's come off his arm. So it's clearly handball. I mean, I don't blame the referee for not seeing it, because I mean, God knows what sort of angle he'd have had on it from probably 30 yards away. But yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? The offside, I thought, was probably one that the linesman could see, in a similar way to the one that we didn't get flagged for our second goal. It was probably about the same distance offside, probably about a foot or so. But I think it's one of those where as long as the assistant is up sort of in line with the last defender, that should be quite an easy one to see, I think, because especially where the winger is basically right in front of him making that cross. So it's not like he's got to kind of look around for when the ball has been played. He knows exactly when the ball's been played, and he can see. And he's only got two players to concentrate on. He's got the last man and the attacker, and yeah, so that was a little bit annoying. But yeah, I mean, Bazunu, perhaps you say, well, take the kitchen sink, which I mean, he's not scared of doing that, is he? I mean, he did it against Birmingham and got away with it. Yep. When that definitely should have been a penalty. And yeah, perhaps he's kind of not gone quite full pelt for whatever reason on this one. Not quite sure, but yeah, we've obviously left the space unguarded. That's quite well played by the winger, in fairness, to kind of do that little knock it one way and run around the other side of the defender to give himself the space. But yeah, we've kind of left ourselves 2 against 2, haven't we, really, in that situation, and the ball's just not bounced kindly. I mean, when you replay that incident 100 times, probably half the times the ball sails between Bazunu and Lowe and goes out for a throw-in. So yeah, just one of those things. It was just such an annoying goal because Swansea hadn't threatened anything.
Yeah. So was it second shot on target? Maybe, I think it was sort of a throwback.
I think they'd had one that the guy had flicked about a yard over the bar or so.
Yeah.
And other than that, they'd barely threatened, and we basically kept them at arm's length for the entirety of that first half. But I did like the sort of attitude that we showed straight after that, as if yeah, sort of we'd been the angry bear that had been poked a little bit.
Poked the bee's nest. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've basically gone straight up the other end and restored the 2-goal cushion. But yeah, I mean, let's be honest, you're never happy with any goal that you concede. But I think that one, there's probably 2 or 3 things that they'll be looking at and saying, well, should be doing a little bit better on those.
We'll get on and preview the cup game in just a moment. I just want to finish on that final 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, Glenn. What was it for you? Was it the subs coming on? Was it changes for the sake of it? I'm thinking, Jack Stevens coming on. A lot of people talking about that. Is that protecting someone that's on a booking, or are we still trying to appease the club captain and squeeze him in somewhere? What was it for you?
Probably all of the above. I mean, I've seen it. Obviously, Harwood Bellis was on a booking, but Harwood Bellis was getting through the game in his armchair, wasn't he? I mean, he could easily have cruised through that game without making another tackle, and there wouldn't have been a problem. Players are used to doing that, and he's certainly sort of good enough and clever enough to not pick up another booking. If that was the reason he came off, it's too early. 60 minutes, you think about it, there's another 40 minutes of football still to be played, probably. So it's too easy. Do that on 75 minutes. Don't do that on 60. I mean, I thought that was the start of the loss of control, because I thought that was an unnecessary substitution. And you can't argue with the fact that it's not just battering someone. Jack Stevens made 2 really bad mistakes near our goal. That presented both the chances that Watford hit the post with in the Watford. That's next week. Who would
Swansea.
we play? Swansea. Swansea hit the post with. It was two bad mistakes, and so the quality drop off was really, really noticeable when that. I just don't believe in making unnecessary changes to the defence for the sake of it. The reason we're so high in the league is because we've sorted the defence out. We settled on that back four. And, more or less, obviously, Bree and Manning have been interchangeable a little bit. But that back four is what is going to get us promoted. If, and the rest of the team more or less sorts itself out. That back four needs to stay in place in my book. And yeah, you could argue at 3-1 up against Swansea that it was comfortable and it was a time to do it. But I think that contributed to the end of the game that we got. It was said in the press conference that, Rothwell would need a bit of time to get up to speed. And that was proved right when he came on, because there was more loss of control with him coming on for Stuart Armstrong. And we've had a very good season with substitutions in that they have generally made the team stronger. You've taken off tired players and brought on players to in their place, and the level of the team has gone up in the main, but it came down. And Swansea's went up, ironically, with their subs. Yannick Bolasie made a big impact for them, and so did the centre forward, Yates, I think his name is. Yeah, they both made a positive difference for Swansea, and no one who came on for us really made a positive difference at all. And if I was Howard Bellis, I'd be a little bit, and he did look a little bit peed off to be substituted.
Yeah. You're surprised,
and then
sure.
You've got the interesting thing with Alcaraz as well, because he didn't get on the pitch, and Joe Rothwell came in from nowhere, maybe 2 training sessions, and he's on. So yeah, hopefully, Russell Martin's shown a capacity to learn from what he's seen. I know he's got a bit of a blind spot with Stevens in particular, but he's kind of, for me, he showed you who he is. It's a saying my mum's got. If someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Just on that, Alfie, is that before we move on, that 20 minutes, is that I think Russell Martin might have said something afterwards about, it was about getting some clips, and then they've got some stuff to work on with him this week. So get him on, get him playing, and then they can review it and go back with him. It's more about the science and the being able to go through the different movements and patterns of play.
Talking about Joe Rothwell there, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, presumably so. I mean, I think the thing he said to me and George on Friday was he's going to have to fry his brain for a week to make sure he's ready for the game. So it's going to be a lot to learn, isn't it? I mean, I get this. If that is the case, I get the science behind that, and that's all well and good. But I do actually agree with Glenn. I would be a little bit peed off if I was Charlie Alcaraz as well. But do you know what? I didn't hear that quote. That's actually an interesting point.
Let's just go around and get player of the week. Steve, player of the week for you. Who stood out? There was a few, to be honest.
I'm a firm believer that shots that are parried by a goalkeeper straight out to the goal scorer should count as an assist. Okay. So Stu Armstrong should have a hat-trick of assists from yesterday. So Stu Armstrong for me.
Stu Armstrong. Glenn?
I've already mentioned him, Will Smallbone, I think, mainly because he's not one that's usually in the running for this sort of thing, but I thought he had an excellent game. So I'll go for him rather than be boring and go for Howard Bellis yet again. So Smallbone.
Any other names, Alfie?
Yeah, I don't know whether he'll win the vote ahead of Smallbone or Stuart Armstrong, but I think I will name Flynn Downs as well, just because he's good every week and he got his deserved goal. So
okay, nice stuff. Well, it's a break from the league this weekend for the 4th round of the FA Cup as we make the trip to Watford. Yay! To help us preview that one, let's welcome Mike Parkin from it's from the Rookery End, your podcast, isn't it? Have I got that right?
Yeah, we didn't think that through, because whenever we get introduced, it's Mike from the Rookery End podcast, and 14 years later, it hasn't got any easier.
Let's say star of from the Rookery End. That kind of works, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll take that. Definitely.
I mean, is it fair to say this is the draw that neither of us really wanted?
Look, I think for Watford at the moment, we're enjoying the football, we're enjoying the games at the moment. So I think actually for us, the fellow Championship side, although for how much longer remains to be seen, is probably not a bad draw, because it just what Watford are looking to do at the moment is just keep a little bit momentum up. So I think rather than get humped away at a Premier League side, or I think it's not a bad draw for us to be honest, to potentially give you an answer you weren't expecting.
Well, a home tie as well, I guess. That's what the managers always ask for, isn't it? And let's just talk about the form, because you've been on a nice little run since Boxing Day.
Yeah, we've done all right. Valérien Ismail's got Watford playing a little bit. He's certainly got us playing more enjoyable stuff than last season. Last year was the first year down from the Premier League, and the attitude was all wrong. Any of the 6, 7, 8, 9 managers we had in charge last season couldn't get a tune out of them. And this year, it just feels like they're all singing from the same hymn sheet for the first time in a long time. So Watford fans, it may sound a little bit counterintuitive because we're sort of mired in mid-table, really looking up at the playoffs a little bit. But we're enjoying this season much more than we have done the last 2 or 3, really. So, yeah, they're doing all right. They're slowly but surely building up a little bit of momentum. I sort of stopped short of a head of steam. I don't think we're quite at that stage yet, but they're looking all right. It's and it's good fun again, which is enough for most of us at the moment.
They seem to, from what I've read, like they're pressing well at the moment. They seem well organised. Is that a good summary? Is that what we might look out for at the weekend?
I think both ends of the pitch we're slightly chaotic defensively. Just heard you guys before I came on talking about your defensive setup and how well you're defending. Not the case for Watford at all. We're sort of chopping and changing a little bit with our centre back pairing. Not really hitting on the right formula. Far too easy to score against. I don't know the last time we kept a clean sheet. I might have had hair the last time we kept a clean sheet. So defensively, we're struggling, and in the final third, we do a lot of the hard work. We get into good areas in the final third, but then tend to overplay, looking for the perfect shot, looking for that one extra pass to craft the perfect chance. And I think sort of Valérien Ismail's pragmatism has served us very, very well this season. He's had a big job on his hands to sort of turn around this ship that's been low on confidence, and the attitude has been all wrong. So he's had a lot to fix, and I understand why he is so pragmatic. But I think it's sort of costing us a little bit. We can't defend. We do a lot of our best work when we're on the front foot. So I'd like to see us let the handbrake off a little bit, but I don't really think that's in Big Val's playbook.
Was it 5 changes for the third round? I'm just wondering, how seriously they're taking the cup. Are we going to see similar changes again? Is there an FA Cup side that he's going to put out at the weekend?
I think it'll be a strong side, primarily because Watford just simply don't have the strength in depth to change things up. I've spoken about the momentum and the belief that is slowly building in this side, and I think what he would be loath to do is risk making wholesale changes. Bringing in, you'd be looking at sort of very, very inexperienced under 21 and youth players coming in, because we just haven't got a big enough squad. And I think that would represent a massive risk, because I think, to be perfectly honest, Southampton would take us apart if we made too many changes. And this season for Watford has been about that slow building upon last week, the week before, and just the team getting to know each other, rebuilding a bit of faith with the fans again, getting the supporters back on side. So I think making too many changes would represent too big a risk. So I think it will be, if you look back at Watford's last 3, 4, 5 games, most of the players you see in those games will be featuring on Sunday, I'd imagine.
You did make a bit of hard work about that Chesterfield game. Was it the 95th minute, I think, the winner?
Yeah. We like to, the magic of the FA Cup. That's what it's all about. We like to do our bit, down at Watford. We take our responsibility seriously. I think they walked into that one. I think we've got a lot of players who aren't used to playing teams of that outside the Football League, and they will have heard National League, and they probably would have thought, okay, we can rock up and sort this lot out without too much difficulty. But I think Chesterfield are a non-league side in name only. They'll be in League Two very, very quickly, and I dare say they might go through that division as well. Very, very good side, and made life difficult for Watford. We did have chances to go 2-0 up very, very early on in the game. Didn't take them. Chesterfield capitalised, and we found it very, very difficult. But I think it does speak to what I was trying to get at earlier about the belief in this Watford side. And it may sound silly to sort of use a game against a non-league side as an illustration of a team who's is coming together in terms of their belief, but they kept going right till the end. Last year we'd have lost that game with arguably a significantly better squad. So I think Watford fans were slightly disappointed that they got themselves into that mess in the first place, but ultimately pretty pleased and impressed that they managed to turn it around and win it right at the death.
I'm hearing lots of similarities and parallels to where we've all been. So you're in good company. Steve, you got a ticket for this one on Sunday? I mean, some people are pretty meh about the cup, but it's a game that we should go there and try and get a good win.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, one of the best things about the FA Cup is obviously the bigger away allocation. So we've got the whole of that end for this game, more than 4,000 going up there. So
and reasonably priced as well, which is always nice.
Yeah, 15 quid. So yeah, can't complain at that at all. The only complaint is Sunday 2:00, because let's face it, who other than Saints and Watford fans is watching Watford against Southampton on a Sunday at 2:00 in the afternoon?
Is it the international? It was an international TV pick. I hadn't really heard of that. I'll be honest. So
basically, because the FA has sold the FA Cup to all these broadcasters around the country, around the world. Part of the deal is that basically from the third round onwards, every game is available for them to televise. And understandably, they don't all want to show. They don't all have like 15 channels where they could show all of the 3:00 games. So as a result, all the games get moved.
Right.
So yeah, it's annoying, but I mean, it's no huge surprise that fans are quite a long way down the list of the sort of pecking order of the FA's priorities.
It's nice to be reminded, even in the Championship, isn't it, that no one cares about supporters.
Well, we've had more games on TV this season than I think we did the previous two in the Premier League, I think. Another Saturday 12:30 kickoff miles from home yesterday to go with Plymouth and Sunderland previously. So yeah, it's one of those where if you want to dance with the devil and sort of take the money that the TV companies are offering, unfortunately, that is the trade-off, that you get massively inconvenienced. And yeah, no, everybody whinges about it, but then we still sell 4,000 tickets. So yeah. I would argue that most people probably aren't quite so bothered.
Thankfully, it's not too far. Glenn, are you excited about this one? Does it get your fires burning? I mean, it was 1-1 back in December, wasn't it? Che Adams with his first goal since August. Remember, yeah. And then that soft goal in injury time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was our turn to concede the late equaliser. So it's going to be a bit of a different game this time round.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, Mike said that Watford won't change their team that much. I hope we don't, because there's no midweek game this week or the week after. So, I hope we don't change the team, but I fear that we will. And it'll be interesting. I mean, everyone's talking about our unbeaten run at the moment. I think this is. I know if we did lose this game, it would then be unbeaten run in the league.
Yeah.
But
it sort of does matter, though, doesn't it? You don't want to.
I think it does. I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. Even if you change seven or eight players, and you've got that sort of caveat in your own mind, I think it matters, and that's why with no midweek game before or after, I think we should put out as strong a side as we can. That being said, when the draw was made, I was very unenthusiastic about it, because I like playing teams that we haven't played. So basically, I don't want anyone from the Premier League or anyone that we've played this year, and to get Watford again is not the most exciting from that point of view. However, it's a localish game, and as Steve said, it's a good one to go up to because of the large allocation, and it's not too far to go. So yeah, from that point of view, it's it's decent. I don't really know what to think about the FA Cup this year, because obviously we're looking to get promoted.
Yeah,
and as Mike said, whichever team wins this game, there's the real chance of getting Spurs away or whatever and getting absolutely tanked or something in the next round. So, it is what it is. I'm more worried about it from the perspective of knock on to our league form, I have to say. So
and injuries, I guess, as well.
Yeah, you don't want injuries, so therefore, put out a few fringe players. But we've got a very good thing going at the moment, and I'm very wary about getting sort of like knocked out of the stride. So So I hope we go strong. But so yeah, looking forward to the game. But yeah, a little bit cautious about it, I have to say.
Do you think in terms of starting lineup, Alfie, it's going to be a similar team that we had out against Walsall in the third round? Maybe, I know he's been dropping hints about Rothwell coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I echo Glen's thoughts. They made 9 changes for the Walsall game, didn't they? I think that would be way too extreme. You can't go making 9 changes again. I don't think any of the young players will start the game. I would expect there to be 5 or 6 changes, though, I think, just purely because he's already said he'll start Joe Rothwell. I think Joe Lumley will and deserves to come back in for another game. He'll obviously start Jack Stephens because Jack Stephens has started right back in 2 games since he's played in every game since he's been back. Basically, at some point, he's found a way to bring him on at some point, so he'll almost certainly start. And I would imagine that he probably looks to start Charlie Alcaraz as well, and Shea Charles, a couple of the young lads who are still sort of pushing and maybe need those minutes. So I think that where I sit on it is, I think you have to make sort of 5 or 6 changes because you don't want to. If someone gets injured and you go, well, why were they starting in the first place? Like a Flynn Down, for example, you miss Flynn Downs for a few weeks, you'd be sitting there thinking, well, Shea Charles was ready to play. But I agree with Glen that you don't want to lose the game, and it's not an easy fixture by any means. I know the goal was a bit soft in the 96th minute last time round, but there's every chance they do get knocked out of their stride like that. And in terms of unbeaten runs, I know we're probably sort of sick and bored about hearing of unbeaten runs now, but in the club's all-time history before the Football League, the longest unbeaten run in all competitions was 21, which we're on now. So if they avoid defeat on Saturday, they will make the all-time unbeaten record as well. So I don't know if the club are going to celebrate that in the same way.
Another graphic for Instagram.
Exactly, yeah. But obviously, the worst possible result, I suppose, is a draw. I think this is the last round where there are replays, and I think the last thing both of these teams will want is a midweek game. So it begs the question: would you actually rather lose than draw? I'm not too sure.
And the next round is midweek as well, by the way.
Yes, it's going to get really busy heading into the next month. I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on the cup, Mike? Is it you just same as us, just like let's get through this and see what happens, or?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, heart bleeds for you, Alfie. Sick and tired of talking about the 21 game unbeaten. Right, it must be absolutely brutal for you. Deary me. But yeah, the cup, it's really difficult. I mean, you can tell by looking at me, I'm of a certain age. I think the first game I ever went to was the FA Cup. It was a 4-4 home tie with Walsall under the Vicarage Road lights. I adore the FA Cup, and I'm desperately disappointed for the way it's sort of the road it's gone down and the lower attendances and stuff like that. It leaves me really cold, and so I'm the old school. I want Watford to win every single game they play. I want them to be taking part in every single round of every single cup competition they can. But obviously, I recognise the difficulties of that. I think this year the FA Cup for us is just a chance to play more football and for this team to grow. And to develop, and if they can perhaps get a decent result against a team like Southampton, you can go in the next round and go, okay, well let's see what happens, and we'll have the day out and not worry about it so much. I think there's potentially more on it in this round because it's another test against. I say similar, you know what I mean. Similar side from the same tier, and I think they'll be looking to test themselves, and I think as supporters will be looking on slightly more keenly than we ordinarily would have been, because it's like, okay, how far down the line is this team? What could we look at for the rest of the season? But I love the FA Cup. Watford have got, for a team our size, we've got really good pedigree in the cup. We've had some really good fun days out. We beat Arsenal in recent memory in that quarter-final at Highbury. We'd had the Wolves semi-final. We won't talk about the final against Man City, although if the FA and the EPL finally get themselves sorted, we might be posthumously awarded that FA Cup. You never know. But
that's optimism.
yeah, exactly. Well, I'm a Watford fan. You've got to stay optimistic. I still love it, and there's still all, as long as you're in the tournament, there's a chance for a little bit of magic. And I don't think Watford are going to go up this season. I think the playoffs are probably a little bit out of reach, just down to our squad depth. I don't think we're in serious relegation trouble either. I keep going on about it, but this really is a season for just getting the club back on an even keel, getting the fans back in love with the team, getting a team that looks organised, competent and competitive. So as long as they turn up against Southampton on Sunday and turn in a reasonable performance, which they have been doing pretty much week in, week out, that's probably going to be good enough. And if we can get the win, I think 5th round, you're thinking, okay, let's get the big tie, let's go somewhere and see if we can't bloody someone's noses before getting on with the season.
I'm going to ask you for a score prediction, if you don't mind, Mike. It's just something silly we always do at the end of the previews. We always get it wrong.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's why. Yeah. I'll show you my Bet365 account in a minute, and you'll know not to put any stock on my prediction. What I would say, lads, you've mentioned that sort of late 96-minute goal at Vicarage Road. What absolutely staggered me in that game, Southampton had all the play, all the ball, were effectively doing what they wanted, then decided to sort of, I'm not sure if you can swear on here, but they sort of S-housed, tried to start wasting time, and it was nonsense from about 20 minutes to go. It put me in mind of sort of Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall's Bournemouth back in the day.
Steady on.
It was so peculiar.
It was our own downfall, wasn't it? It was our own doing.
Yeah, there's no need for me to go to Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall. I take it back. It just felt like a very odd sort of call to go down that route, and I think ultimately you'd sort of played yourselves a little bit there. I doubt you're going to make that mistake this time. I think I agree with you guys that there'll be a couple of changes on both sides, and I also think that the point that I think Steve made, neither team will want a replay. Will hopefully play into it being a sort of quite an exciting game. Certainly, if it's tight towards the end. I cannot, in good conscience, predict a Watford win, because Southampton unbeaten in 21. I know you're sick and tired of talking about it, Alfie, but I do have to raise it again. I'm going to go for a fun and games 3-2 Southampton win. How about that for you?
Okay, great, Steve.
Bite your arm off for that. That'll be good fun. I'm slightly concerned that if we make too many changes, then we're just going to look a little bit disjointed, which we did in parts in that league game at Watford. Couple of injuries forced us into late changes. I think Flynn Downs was ill, and the midfield we lost the plot in midfield for like the last 15 minutes of both halves. If we kind of sacrifice that again, then could be in a little bit of trouble. And I'm unfortunately going to go with the result that nobody wants, which is a 1-1 draw.
A draw. Okay, I knew you were going to say that. Glenn, were you thinking the same?
I was exactly the same. But if you look at the prediction league, Steve and I are both bottom, and we always pick the same thing. He always goes first, and I always think, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I'm going to be a miserable SOB, and think this is the end of the unbeaten run. To be honest, I'm going to go for 1-0 Watford, just to be different, really.
For anyone who's not aware of our predictions league, by the way, the person that's top is the one that knows the least about football. So that tells you everything you need to know. Alfie, a score prediction from you as well?
Yeah, I'm not 100% confident they're going to win the game.
No,
I think it doesn't. I don't think it. I don't think they're going to make huge amounts of change, but I think they will make a few, and I think that will, like Glenn says, sort of cause a bit of disruption. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw, which I don't want. I don't want another midweek game. So I don't think anybody does.
Okay. Mike, thanks for coming on. Enjoy the game at the weekend, and I'm sure we've got another game soon, haven't we? Or it won't be too far away, will it? We'll get you back on if that's all right. We'll catch up again soon.
Love to. Thanks for having me on, lads. Enjoy the game.
All right, mate. Yeah, enjoy the game as well. If you are watching live, don't forget you can stick all your predictions into the comments, because we love to hear from those. Before we finish, just want to touch on the January transfer window. Alfie, it seemed to dominate the press conference. Well, certainly quite a few questions. Was it Friday? I think you did the Swansea presser, and Russell Martin saying that maybe still one more to come in.
Yeah, still one more to come in, but I think that he sort of caveated it by saying, and they are absolutely trying for one more. They are trying for a winger, but he caveated it by saying that if we can't get the right one, basically, then we won't. And you know what? I don't think it's not going to stick my neck on the line and say they don't need one, but I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. I don't think there's an absolute crying need to bring somebody in, anybody. I think if you can get the right person in, then 100% they could do with it. But they're going to have a couple of players come back. The more interesting one for me is what goes out the other way, and obviously it shows how sort of chronically online the world is that Carl Walker-Peters takes a few pictures down off his Instagram, and everyone sort of flies into panic mode that he's leaving, and Chelsea are signing him. Russell Martin said basically that there's been no such sort of thought on their regard. He's spoken to Carl, he's pretty happy here, and it's going to take a lot of money to buy him. Obviously, if someone comes in with 25-30 million, then I imagine they'll absolutely say yes to that offer. But yeah, keeping hold of Carl Walker-Peters and challenge. I don't think 25 million for Carl. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want it to happen, but I think they probably would have to
How
take
long
that.
has he got left on his contract?
I imagine 18 months, but I'm not 100% sure. I think 2025. I think.
Are you thinking there's some business to be done there, Glenn? Are you thinking their head might be turned if the phone rings?
I'm hoping not. But if someone comes in with a 30 million plus, then yeah, it's going to be very hard to turn down. You see some very inaccurate, clearly inaccurate reports saying he's only got 6 months left. We know he's got longer than that. But I just wondered how long it was, whether it was 18 months or 2.5 years sort of thing. But I just think the fact that he committed to us at the start of the season, he's played so well. We are in with a very good shout of going up. If we don't go up, then he leaves with our blessing, I guess. Still for a decent amount of money at the end of the season. But no, I'd be surprised if he left now, to be honest.
It does seem a bit strange, Steve, that we're sat here with, is it 21 games, and we're still talking about somebody potentially coming in. They're going to have to be a hell of a winger if they come in and get in that side.
Yeah, especially with, as Alfie said, players to come back. Basically, we're a week or two away from Sulemana being available again, Edozie potentially being available again, Joe Aribo being available again. So all of a sudden, the squad depth in basically once we turn out at Rotherham suddenly looks a lot deeper again. So yeah, if Shay Adams is still in the building, which I think, to be honest, at this stage, I think we're probably all expecting him to stay and then go on a free in the summer, aren't we?
It makes sense for everybody. There's no reason to do anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, unless somebody's waving silly money in under our noses, then there's no reason for us to.
Is it 5 goals in 6 games he's got now?
Something like that. Yeah. There's no real imperative on our part now. Whereas I think at the end of August, if we were getting somebody in his place, then yeah, okay, we can afford to let go. But having signed someone that was already injured, that was never really going to be on the table. And I think it's even less on the table now, especially now we know that Ross Stewart's out for the season. So yeah, I think, I would actually be surprised if we do bring one more in. The players that we've been linked with sort of in wide areas just don't, they don't really excite me, I don't think. And one of them was David Brooks, and I don't think we can loan again from Bournemouth.
We can.
Oh, we can we? Can we get one more, have we?
Yeah.
But he came off the bench today, so I'm not sure whether that all of a sudden means that he's kind of back in their thoughts, because all of a sudden Bournemouth have got a load of injuries as well. So I think we've seen with the general transfer market that clubs are keeping hold of players because players are getting injured more, because the demands on players because of all of these competitions. And I think, in fairness, partly the added injury time that's being added onto every game adds up over the course of a season, and players' bodies aren't able to cope with the tempo of everything, and as a result, you need that squad depth. And I think as a result, we're going to stick with what we got.
I was really nervous yesterday with the celebrations after the game. I don't know if you saw Ryan Fraser. I think he was on Che Adams's shoulders celebrating. And if you're the same age as me, I remember being 13 years old watching that League Cup final when Steve Morrow fell off with Tony Adams and dislocated his shoulder. And I was thinking, for Christ's sake, just put him down. Put him down.
I think Tony Adams was still drinking at that point. To be honest,
the joke at the time was he broke his arm because he fell off a donkey, wasn't it? If I remember rightly. The women's team were back in Championship action as well for the first time this year. They won 3-0 against Watford, 3 goals, 3 points. So let's hope that's an omen for the FA Cup on Sunday. I think that's pretty much it for this week. Feels like we've covered it all off. So thank you for watching. Thanks again to Pitter Self Drive for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget they're offering cars, vans, trucks and minibus hire for flexible short-term or long-term rentals. There's the 24-hour drop-off service as well. And if you're a TSP listener, you can get 10% off your rental with the code Total Saints, which is all one word. You can use that code when you're booking online, or just quote the code when you're booking over the phone. To find out more or get in touch, head to pitterselfdrive.co.uk or give them a call on 02380 474 443. Don't forget, you can also follow Total Saints Podcast on all the social media platforms. Have a search for Total Saints Pod and you'll find us on there. You can give us a follow, you can drop us a DM, or if you'd like to email us, you can do that via the website as well. It's always nice to hear from you. And as I mentioned at the start, we're on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with a monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There are 4 tiers on there, ranging from £5 to £20 per month. Different perks for each of the tiers, including some shouts at the end of the podcast for all the patrons in our Francis Benali and our Mick Shannon tier. So, roll of honour, thank you to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, Saints in Exile, Gavin Ford, James Harron, Nicky Nicholson, Southampton NY, Drew Dyer, James Kibbe and Mike E, who are in the Francis Benali tier, and also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Nick Reed, Paul Stewart, Phil Horstrop, Matt Hall, and Mark Littlewood, who are all in our Mick Shannon tier. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Alfie. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for